I wanted to do a short little video on GameStop. I mean, this is an interesting phenomenon. The people don't quite appreciate the implications of what is really going on behind it. First of all, it is part of the anti-establishment movement that has been growing in many different aspects within the United States for some time. I mean, this goes back to Ross Perot, basically Pat Buchanan, the Tea Party movement. This is largely a movement against the establishment, but it's also impacting, turning against Wall Street, member of the Occupy Wall Street movement, etc. So it's just seen that the corruption is so pervasive throughout the political system, the court system, the politics, really, and Wall Street. So this is basically what happens. I mean, the banks keep, punting big time. They lose money, and then they hold out their hands, basically asking to be bailed out. And these are the large investment banks that honestly shouldn't even be given bailouts, but that's the way it is. They then stand up and threaten the government, gee, if we fail, who's going to sell your bonds? So the government has always stepped up and had to bail these people out. But besides this whole issue of an anti-establishment, which basically is not Trumpism, and people are wrongly, labeling that. Trump just happened to be in 2016 there at the right time. So this movement has been going on, and he beat 17 career politicians. And what everybody didn't understand in the press and in Washington was that they said, oh, this is a fluke, it's populism, etc. No, it was basically a vote against them. As I said, there are no mirrors in Washington. So this is the real issue. And but what the GameStop has also done is this GameStop has been more or less the start of something that's different in the sense that it is shifting the attitudes of people back towards investing, where that was kind of a dirty word. And from the Great Depression, really we ended up with this attitude of really that, gentlemen buy bonds sort of thing that Mellon said. I mean, I remember, growing up that if you were a speculator in commodities or something, you were kind of looked down upon. So it was, buy government e-bonds, that's safe, etc. This was the attitudes. Then we came into the 1980s and the big takeover boom. They made the movie, Wall Street, about that with Michael Douglas. All right. But what had happened was that we had left basically a public wave which peaked in 1981 and bottomed in 85. And by that, what I mean is that the confidence was in government, not the private sector. So people misunderstood that. They were, oh, this is outrageous. Stocks are rising to, overvalued. They weren't. When you could buy a company, sell its assets, and triple your money, that is hardly saying the stock market is overvalued. That's why our forecast back then that, the Dow would go from 1,000 to 6,000 within a few short years, people thought we were crazy. But from a valuation standpoint, that's what it was simply the takeover boom. All right. Now that we're basically towards the end of what we call a private wave. Private wave is where the confidence shifts dramatically towards the public, from the public sector into the private. This is what this GameStop is really about. You're having an expansion of people coming back and saying, oh, hey, look at these stocks. Maybe I can trade. Maybe I can be a day trader, make money. This is all accelerated even by the lockdowns. People losing their jobs were, basically told to stay home. That's it. So what do? You watch TV all day or you start trading. So we're looking at things starting to develop, Bitcoin going crazy. I mean, all these different things is a shift. So the GameStop was not something like a fluke. This is part of a trend. So as we move into the end of this private wave cycle, which we have, and it should peak around 2032, we're looking at the confidence in government collapsing. I mean, I'm going to put up a chart here so you can see this is our index of capital from moving down all the way into the bottom, really was 2009. And moving up from there on out is showing that the shift in really where people are putting their money is starting to move back into the tangible side. So that's why we see, rare coins and stamps and art and all these things expanding dramatically in price. I mean, the first edition of Batman magazine bringing over $2 million. I mean, people just shake their heads at some of these things. I mentioned there was a gold coin of Brutus, where on the reverse, it's Ides Mar. I killed Caesar on the Ides of March. All right. It was estimated at $500,000. It brought 2.7 million pounds. I mean, nobody ever expected something like that. You have art going crazy. So this is all about, capital moving really into the private sector. And so you have to step back and take a look at what this phenomenon really is. And GameStop was really part of this trend. All right. I mean, you can go to our site, our Global Market Watch, pick this thing out. I mean, a year in advance was showing it was starting to rally. So technically, this was in line. And that's what, some of these people, I think, on these Reddit systems are maybe touting up the trend itself, because the recommendations from that silver, for example, our computer was showing they were moving up to begin with. So it's not that they're creating something that's against the trend. And I've always said that nobody can really manipulate a market into its opposite position. You can't take a bull market and then suddenly create a bear market, because there's so many things involved. All right. And international capital coming in and putting in the check and balance, etc. So it's much more complicated. As far as manipulations are concerned, yes, you can basically maybe accelerate the trend, increase the volatility, but you can't turn a bull market into a bear market or vice versa, no matter who buys what or sells what. That's simply the way it goes. So what we're looking at is a real shift, and I believe that this GameStop is part of this phenomenon of this shift from public sector to private sector. And just look at the chart that we have provided.